The next principle is the principle of procrastination. There's two kinds of procrastination. There's positive procrastination and negative procrastination. Positive procrastination is when you procrastinate on doing low priority tasks. It is when you procrastinate on doing things that do not contribute very much to your major goals. Negative procrastination is when you procrastinate on what is called your most important tasks. Now, there's an interesting point, is that their tasks are either urgent, which means they have to be done now, or they are important, which means they don't have to be done now, but they have a very high impact on your future. We have a natural tendency to always do what is urgent rather than what is important. Important tasks are seldom urgent, and urgent tasks are seldom important. So you overcome procrastination with a very, very simple method. It was developed by W. Clement Stone when he was a young man. He built a fortune of $500 million, and this is one of the central principles of his life. It's simply this. Every morning when you get up, say over and over to yourself, do it now, do it now, do it now, I do it now, do it now. Whenever you have this tendency to procrastinate, program your subconscious mind with this automatic conditioned command, do it now, do it now, do it now. Do you know that less than 2% of the population have a sense of urgency? And that there is not an example of a successful person anywhere who does not have a sense of urgency? That if you just develop a sense of urgency when somebody gives you a task, that you get on it and do it fast, that alone will move you into the top ranks in a very short period of time. Number 9, delegate. Delegate everything that you possibly can. Now, what does delegation mean? What it means is this, is that whatever your hourly rate is, let us say your goal is to earn $50,000 a year. If you work 8 hours a day, that's $25 an hour. We got that? So you're a $25 an hour person. Now, the only way you can make $25 an hour is if you do $25 or more work. And the only way you can do $25 an hour or more work is if you take anything that can be done by anybody who earns less than you per hour, 20, 15, 10, 5, and so on, and delegate, outsource, have somebody else do it. The most valuable resource in the world today is productive time. And do not waste your productive time dropping off laundry, getting your car washed, mowing your lawn, cleaning your house. Do not waste your productive time doing things that you can hire people to do for $5 or $10 an hour. Use your productive time on tasks that are more expensive, of higher value. Delegate everything that you possibly can. In fact, its general conclusion is this, is that if you cannot delegate, if you cannot get other people to do things of lower priority for you, you cannot grow, you cannot develop, you cannot be successful. You may be successful running a shoe shine stand, but that's about the limit of it. Okay, the next principle, number 10, is meetings. Meetings are an absolutely essential part of human life. We spend 75% of our time outside of our home and inside our home communicating with other people. I read a statistic recently that says that the average person spends 3 to 5 years of their life in meetings. The average business person spends 25% of their day in meetings and is wasting more than half of that time. So here are some of the keys to using meetings as an effective business tool. Number 1 is have a purpose for a meeting. Make sure that it's crystal clear at the beginning what the purpose of the meeting is. If you are the person organizing the meeting, when you start the meeting, you say the purpose of this meeting is. And if you are not, when you sit down, you ask the person who is chairing the meeting, what is the purpose of this meeting? You look upon a meeting as an investment. Take the time, the dollar value of the time of each of the people at the table, and look upon it as an investment of that many dollars in time. Best way to save time in meetings is what? Is don't go at all. If you can possibly avoid a meeting, don't go to it. If there's no need for you to be there, get the report on what happened later. Second thing we do when you do go to meetings is make sure that there's an agenda. An agenda is like a list. It's a track to run on. If the chairperson doesn't have a list, offer to put together a list or an agenda for them. Even if you just write it out and photocopy it, it's better than no list at all. Deal with the most important items first. When you have finished your contribution, ask if you can be excused, and start and stop the meeting on time. Now, what's the biggest time waster in meetings? In my estimation, it's 2 things. The meeting goes off track and the conversation becomes irrelevant. Or second of all, people wait until the latecomer shows up. So here's the basic rule with meetings, is always assume that the latecomer is not coming at all and start the meetings punctually. Start and stop the meetings at the specified time. Say the meeting will start at 8, end at 9, and at 9 o'clock, wrap up the meeting. Number 11 is interruptions. The biggest single time wasters in the world of work within the office are interruptions. And the 2 major types of interruptions are telephone and walk-in visitors. people that just drop in to socialize and to talk to you. So how do you deal with these interruptions? Let's talk about the telephone first. The way that you deal with telephone interruptions is to remember this. When you were a child, the telephone was where you got phone calls from your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Today, we still are conditioned to have an irresistible urge to answer the phone. As a matter of fact, it's been demonstrated that you can get through to people on the phone that you could never get to physically, because people cannot resist answering a ringing phone. You have to discipline yourself to remember that if it's important enough, they'll phone back. So here's some of the things you do with telephone calls. First of all, have your calls held. Tell somebody you're going to be in a meeting, you're going to be working, and have all your calls held for 2 or 3 hours, and then phone back all at once. Second of all, with regard to interruptions, if you don't have somebody to hold your calls, do what I do when I work at home. I unplug the telephone. Now people say, well, what if it's important? If it's important, they'll call you back. Another thing that you can do if you can't stand unplugging the telephone is put on an answering machine and have the calls captured with an answering machine and then call them back at your own leisure. But don't be a slave to the telephone. The next principle with regard to interruptions is people. Most people are time wasters. That's the basic rule. Most people are time wasters. They waste your time, they waste their own time, they waste other people's time, and you have to be alert to it. So when a person comes in and they want to talk, they drop in without notice. The very fastest way to get rid of a person is to stand up when they walk in. If you stand up and stay standing up, they won't sit down. And you can lead them out by saying, there's one more thing before you go. And then just say it and lead them to the door. If necessary, and I've had to do this on occasion, a talkative person comes into my office, I get up and I start toward the door and I say, I was just leaving, and I leave. And the person follows me out and goes on somewhere to bother somebody else, and then I go back into my office. Now another key management principle, and in management, in time management, in personal management, this is essential. It's what is called key result areas. In other words, it is the key results that you have been hired to accomplish for your business. Even if you own your own business, you are still subject to key result areas. And the way that you find out your key result areas is you ask yourself this question over and over again. Why am I on the payroll? Why are you on the payroll? What have you been hired to accomplish? So you have to ask, what are the core functions of your job? What are the goals of your job? Now, many people say to me, well, I'm not sure. Do you know what the major reason for stress in the American workplace is today? Is people don't know what's expected. I would say 80 or 90% of people out there do not know what's expected. They're not sure why they're on the payroll. And here's a very simple technique for it. Go to your boss with a list of everything that you do and ask your boss to organize it in order of priority. Say what's number 1, what's number 2, what's number 3, what's A, B, or C. Help him or her organize your list in order of priority and give it back to you. I promise you, you'll be surprised. But why is it that you absolutely have to know why you're on the payroll? It's simply this, is that you cannot perform excellently, you cannot do superior work, you cannot be promoted, you cannot get a raise unless you are doing and doing well the key things that your boss has hired you to do, okay? The next, number 13, is batching tasks. It's interesting that there is what is called, in the world of work, a learning curve. A learning curve says this. It says when you do a job the first time, it takes you the most amount of time to do it because you're learning how. The second time, it takes less. The third time, it takes less. The fourth time, it takes less. In fact, learning curve theory says that you can decrease the amount of time by as much as 80% if you do the same job over and over again over a period of time. So batching your tasks is a major time management tool. What does it mean? It means that if you're going to make phone calls, make all your phone calls at once. Have your calls held, make them all at once. If you're going to do invoices, do all the invoices at once. If you're going to do correspondence, do all the correspondence at once. If you're going to read and catch up, read everything at once. It's been found that if you do this on a regular basis, you'll get so much more done by doing it and concentrating on batches of tasks than if you did not. So batch your task whenever you possibly can. Imagine what most people do is they do a little bit of telephone call, a little bit of correspondence, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they have no learning curve at all. Each one takes the maximum amount of time. So batch your tasks. Put groups of tasks together at once and do them at once. Okay, the next principle is neatness. Every single study that has been done says this, that if you will just clean up your work environment so it is completely neat and everything is off of your desk or your workplace except the one thing you're working on, that will increase your productivity by 20 to 40%. People have a difficult time understanding this, but I have tested it. I've worked with a messy desk, I've worked with a clean desk, and I tell you, I promise you, you will be astonished at the difference it makes. Now, how do you clean it up? Well, it's very simple. There's a very simple way of cleaning off a desk. It's called the TRAF system. The TRAF system has 4 letters. T stands for toss. Remember that in time management, your wastebasket is your best friend. So toss it out, throw it away. R stands for refer, which means it's not relevant to you, so that you refer it to somebody else. A stands for action. And what you do is you take a file folder and you put it into an action folder, so it's out of the way. And F stands for file. File it away, do something with it. But before you file, always ask this question: what would happen if I didn't have this document? What would happen if I never could find this again? And if it's not particularly serious, throw that away too. Once you've done that, TRAF, you've tossed it, referred it, filed it, or put it in an action file. Once you've done that, then you start with your action file and you work through it. Neatness is important. Clean your desk, clean your workplace. Even in the kitchen, you'll find that if you take one thing out and use it and put it away, and take another thing out, you'll get far more done in a short period of time. Now here's the rule: if you're not using it, put it away. If you're not using it, put it away. Even if you have to take the stuff off your desk and your credentials and put it on the floor, do it. Here's the final point. In a study that was done recently, 98% of senior executives said they would not promote a messy person, that they would not give a messy person greater responsibilities, that if you are messy, no matter how much you kid yourself, everybody around you concludes that you are inefficient, undependable, unreliable, and incompetent. And even if you do the job well, they think it's just an accident. Number 16 is to use what we call transition time. Remember this, is that you will always be paid in life for the value of your contribution. And if you want to earn more, you must learn more. And the most successful people are those who are continually taking in new information, continually learning more, continually taking every opportunity to keep current with their profession and to advance their knowledge. In fact, the knowledge in every single field today is doubling every 5 to 7 years, which means that whatever you're doing, in order to stay even, your knowledge has to double every 5 to 7 years. Now, it's simple to do this. The basic rule is this: you should or you must spend an hour every day investing in your own mind, investing in yourself. You must take an hour every day and read and study and take notes. If you're doing less than an hour a day, you're falling behind. If you do 2 hours a day, you put yourself on the side of the angels. Now, here's some of the ways that you can get this extra learning time, this extra working time, this extra personal growth time. First and most important of all is driving or traveling to and from work. If you drive, the average driver today drives 12 to 25,000 miles a year. You can become one of the best educated people in your profession simply by listening to audio cassettes going to and from work or to and from errands. Now, another very important part of transition time is coffee breaks. You know, the average person takes 2 coffee breaks a day, 20 minutes each, 40 minutes a day. 40 minutes a day times 5 days a week is 200 minutes. 200 minutes times 50 weeks a year is 10,000 minutes. 10,000 minutes is 166 hours. 166 hours is over 4 full 40-hour weeks. Now, what does that mean to you? It means that if you just decide that you're going to read on a particular subject at your coffee breaks for the next year, you will be an expert on that subject before the year is out. Just when you sit down with coffee, make sure that you have something to read, whether it's time management or goal setting or personal communications or your profession. And most people sit there in their coffee breaks and they read the sports page and they don't realize that their life is passing them by. Well, remember, keep taking in more information. Use those, what are called gifts of time. These are gifts of time that are given to us by God, and we can do anything we want with them. But high-performing human beings use those gifts of time as though they were precious, and low-performing human beings do not. Which do you want to be? The next key is punctuality. My friend Joel Weldon says it very well. He says, if you're not early, you're late. That there is only one minute period in any appointment when you're exactly on time. And so if you aren't there early, you're there late. Less than 5% of people in America are punctual. Less than 5% of the population is punctual. And those people stand out. As a matter of fact, if you want to stand out from the average person, all you have to do is develop a reputation for punctuality. Pretty soon people say, boy, he or she sure is punctual. He or she sure is punctual. Now, let me tell you something about punctual people. If you ask a person, what do you think about so-and-so who is very punctual? They will say, I think this person is more competent, more reliable, more dependable, more intelligent, more valuable, and more likely to be promoted and given greater responsibilities than the person who is late all the time. The person who is late all the time is considered unreliable, sloppy, undisciplined, a poor time manager, and not capable of greater responsibilities. Why is it that people are not punctual? Two reasons. One is they don't realize how important it is. It never occurs to them that when you are late for an appointment, you are insulting the person who has agreed to see you at that time. Develop a reputation for being punctual. And finally, one other thing is if you are a superior and you have subordinates or you have people working for you, reporting to you, don't keep them waiting. If you agree to see them at 3 o'clock, don't keep them out there spinning their wheels, standing around. It's one of the worst insults that you can do to people. And if I could just come back one more time, with regard to communications, you know one of the great time wasters in life, this is aside from the points that we're talking about, is lack of concentration, distraction, fatigue. It's not paying attention. If somebody comes in to see you, cut off all phone calls, close the door, clear your desk, and concentrate single-mindedly on a person. 10 minutes of concentrated conversation will clear up more than 1 hour of interrupted conversation. Pay attention, take notes. Now, number 19 is called work simplification. Always be looking for ways to do tasks faster, easier, cheaper, quicker, better. Always be looking for ways to do them faster. As a matter of fact, over and over again, individuals have put their careers on the fast track by finding ways to streamline existing processes. Now, here's a couple of other ideas which have been very useful to me in terms of getting more done in a short period of time. Here are the 6, maybe 7 key ideas. If you want to get more done in a given period of time, or if you want to get more done, period, you can do 1, you can work longer. In other words, you can spend more hours working. But that's not a great idea because your productivity starts to drop off and you start to make mistakes, which you have to come back and correct and so on. Number 2 is you can work faster. You can get more done within a short period of time. Number 3 is you can do fewer things, but do more important things, do higher payoff tasks in the same period of time to increase your productivity. Number 4 is you can do things that you are better at. One of the qualities of leaders is that leaders, exceptional people, are always concentrating their time on doing what they do best. So ask yourself, what is it that I'm the best at? What is it that I do the easiest? You can sometimes dramatically increase your productivity simply by concentrating on where you're good. Another thing that you can do is make fewer mistakes. You know, there's an old saying that there's never enough time to do it right, but there's always enough time to do it over. If you make fewer mistakes, you will get far more done within a certain time, within that time period. And the last thing which many people miss is do things together. Teamwork. Putting a group of people together to work on a complex project can sometimes get the project done in 2 hours, whereas it would take another individual 8 or 9 or 10 hours. So do things together. Work as teams with other people. Those are the keys. But work simplification means always finding faster, easier, newer, quicker, cheaper, more efficient ways to do what you're doing. Number 20 is the magic word. The magic word in time management is no. Learn to say no to activities, tasks, responsibilities, and obligations that do not contribute to the most important goals that you have set for yourself. It's incredible how much of your life is taken up by people who ask you to do things and you do it because of a sense of obligation. Let me tell you, as I said to you before, most people do not value their time, so they don't value yours. Now, how do you deal with a person who you know, who you like, who you respect, who asks you to do something? Very simple. When they ask you to do something or work on a committee or take on a project, ask, especially if you have, and it's not if you're boss, but especially if you have control, is say, let me think about it and get back to you. There's an old saying that delay is the cruelest form of denial. If they press you for a decision, say, I cannot make a decision now, I have to think about it. And after you've thought about it for 24 hours, call them back and say, I've thought about it, I simply don't have the time. But thank you very much for thinking about me, and get on with the rest of your life. You know what Nancy Reagan says? Nancy Reagan says, just say no. And finally, number 21 is balance. In all of time management, you have to ask this question is, what is the purpose of managing your time well? What is the purpose of getting an extra 2 or 3 hours a day? And the purpose is to enhance and improve the quality of your life. And the most important things in a person's life are their health, their peace of mind, and your relationships. In fact, the quality of your relationships is the true measure of your quality of life. So take time to invest time in your relationships. Spend time with the people who are close to you, your spouse, your loved ones, your parents, your children. Take time, because that's what life is. Life is managing your time so that you can do the things that are most important to you. Do you know how much time the average working parent spends talking to their child in America today? 30 seconds per day. Do you know how much time the average couple spends talking together? Intimate communication? 4 minutes, according to the recent research. Very, very important. If you want to be successful in life, you've got to be sure what your priorities and values are, and your highest value must be the people that you love and the people who love you. They must be your help. They must be your energy. They must be your peace of mind. They must be your emotional and spiritual development. They must be the completion of you as a human being. So when you are using all these time management techniques, remember that the purpose of using these time management techniques is to enhance the overall quality of your life. Ask again, what would you do if you only had 6 months to live? What would you do if you only had 6 months to live? Who would you spend your time with? Where would you go? What would you want to do? What would be important? What would be unimportant? If you ask that question over and over again, you'll have a tendency to keep your life in balance.